Welcome to today's webinar by the Jerusalem Press Club. I'm Talia Dekel. This briefing is part of a series of discussions the JPC is hosting on the planned move by Israel to claim sovereignty or annex parts of the West Bank. Today, we're very lucky to have a man who spent years at the forefront of the country's security efforts and in public service. Matan Vilnai is currently the chair of Commanders for Israel's Security, having served as Minister of the Home Front and Deputy Defense Minister with the Labor and Independence parties. Mr. Vilnai led a long career in the IDF and was most recently Israel's ambassador to China. So first of all, Matan, thanks very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And let's get straight into it. You've come out quite strongly against plans to formally recognize Israeli control over the disputed territories, as has the organization you head. CIS put out a policy paper on the matter in October 2018, which we'll share towards the end of our call in the chat section. So I know it's a lot to summarize, but perhaps you can begin by laying out the immediate security challenges you believe will unfold if the move is actually made.
It's my turn, Tala.
Yes, please go ahead.
I have to say? Okay. Good morning, good, not afternoon, good morning. I'm very happy to give you my short understanding about the meaning of unilateral annexation. And the most important thing is to understand we are talking about unilateral, not annexation, because annexation is something else, but unilateral, which means only by ourselves. And it contributes nothing to the security of the State of Israel. And this is my main point. Because if we'll argue that we can do this and that, okay, you can argue. But no one understands that annexations, unilateral annexations, will give something to Israel's security. And I am the head of Mefakdim, commanders, for the security of the State of Israel. It's a group of 300 generals, ex-generals, generals is for life, but it's ex-generals. And we understand, we study the meaning of annexations several years ago. When everybody said, don't deal with this, it's not important, it's idea of all the Michiganers in the deep right, no one is going to do something about it. And 3 years after that, it became the main issue in the strategic life of the State of Israel. And there are two main points. One is the Palestinians, and then the Jordanians. The Palestinians in the West Bank, if, because of the annexation, the unilateral annexation, will seize all the efforts of the security forces of our side and their side fighting terror, there is one possibility, that at the end, the Palestinian Authority will collapse and Hamas will take over. And they are ready for this, and they are waiting for this. And the same about Gaza. Because unilateral annexations, maybe you know when you started. You never understand what will be the next phase and the third phase, and after that, and it will be at the end, a position that we must take over the whole West Bank again. And the same about Gaza. Hamas in Gaza is not going to sit and do nothing. And everyone can assume what they can do. We are not afraid of them, but it will change the whole situation around Israel and in the Middle East. And let's talk about the Jordanians. The Jordanians, we have the peace treaty with Jordan. It's one of the cornerstones of Israel's strategy. And people will tell you, okay, but for the Jordanian, it's so important that they will do nothing about it. First of all, I doubt it. Secondly, it's not only the king. The people in the street in Jordan, you know it, most of them are Palestinians. And change of the peace agreement with Jordan that is very problematic, any change the Palestinians in Jordan will not allow the king to continue. And if you know, the king is not is a very delicate situation now in his position as a king of Jordan regarding the peace treaty with the Israelis. So if we will achieve something to our security, we can talk about it. We can deal with it. Maybe we have to do it. But if nothing will be for our security, only for something else that I don't know what is it, why we have to do the annexations. So the first question is why we have to have the annexation. What's happened? And from a security point of view, and believe me, I served only for 36 years in the army. I served in the Central Command in the Jordan Valley, in Gaza Strip. I was the commander of Southern Command during Oslo Accord. I was the one, they met the first general, Jordanian general and Palestinian general. This was what I did. And I know exactly what is the meaning of dealing with them and what is the meaning of the unilateral annexations in Judea and Samaria, in the West Bank. That's it very short. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much. You mentioned quite generally what we might see, but could you maybe specifically get into the geographic regions themselves? Are we going to see violence erupt in the West Bank? Are we going to see violence erupt on the Gaza border? Does this mean a renewed encounter for the Gaza periphery residents, maybe further into Israel? What are we likely to see?
I'm not sure, טל, לא בטוח שהבנתי את השאלה.
I'm asking what specific demonstrations we might see. Is it going to turn into something big? Are we going to see rocket attacks? What do you think we're going to see on the ground?
I'm not a prophet. I understand that the Palestinians, the people in the city, in the West Bank, they feel very good economically, and it's very important. In Gaza, it's the opposite. And it depends what will happen. Anyhow, it will not be good. Because if the people, not Abu Mazen, his people that are doing the day-to-day work in the security forces will be traitors within their families, they will be regarded as traitors by their families, it will be a disaster. Because he will say, okay, we have to continue, but I say, we can't do it. And if this will start, you never know what will be the second phase. I remember the first days of what we used to call the first intifada. It's not first, but let's assume, I'm talking about 1988, many years ago. When it started, no one really understood what is going on. Not the Israelis, the Palestinians as well. Arafat that sat there in Tunisia, they understood nothing. And the people in the street, they decided how to behave with no commanders, with no headquarters, just gangs in several places. It was then in Gaza, the same could happen in the West Bank, the same, exactly the same. And Hamas is waiting for this moment. And Hamas, you know, is well organized, and they're waiting for the moment that will start something in the street, and they will take over again. How it will be then, no one knows. But it will be very bad.
So yesterday, Army Radio Galei Tzahal quoted an anonymous senior security official as saying that forecasts were exaggerated and that as long as the move didn't impact the Palestinians' daily lives or their ability to work, and I don't think we really know what the outcome will be, then he or she is not expecting the worst. Is that something you can react to?
I don't know. I try not to be a prophet of thinking about bad things, but I understand that no one needs it. And I understand that will do nothing for our security. It will change nothing in our, there is nothing in the West Bank or in the Jordan Valley that we would like to do, but because there is no annexation, we can't do it. Nothing like that. We can do in the settlements, in the military bases, in the military action, whatever we need to do in order to secure the state of Israel. There is nothing that because of annexations, we can't do it. And this is the main point.
Okay. According to a recent survey put out by your organization, by Commanders for Israel's Security, a quarter of the public supports annexation, whereas a similar question polled by the Israel Democracy Institute found double this result, as did other polls conducted in the past month. Does the public not understand what's at stake? Is it perhaps a failure on the part of organizations such as your own to explain to the public?
It could happen at the end. It can ignite a chain of that at the end we have to control again Judea, Samaria, the West Bank, the Palestinian cities, the Palestinian refugee camps. We have to enter there again. And it will change the whole motion in Israel as a democracy. I believe in our independence declaration of 48 of a Jewish democratic state. It will be not Jewish, and I'm not sure about the democracy, if we will start it. So people can claim this and that, but in fact, it will open a new gate, and it will be something else that it's not Israel as we like it to be.
But do you have a way of explaining why the public feels a certain way, why half of the public, according to most polls, actually does support the annexation?
We have our plan, we have our program, commanders, we have our program, what we have to do in order to enhance the security of the state of Israel, in order that Israel will remain a Jewish democratic state. We believe that we understand how to do it. It's not easy, but we can do it in the area with a Palestinian state. And we have to remember that annexation is part of the 100 plan of President Trump, that first of all is declaring a Palestinian state. And the Israelis try to push it aside because they understand the meaning of annexation, the people in the right. But they would like not to talk about a Palestinian state. When they understand that it's a package, it's together, they change their minds and they have their own problems. And this is the point. Because
I'm glad you brought up the plan itself. The Palestinian Authority was actually given the opportunity to participate in talks with the US government during the formulation of the plan, if you recall. Is the Israeli government meant to continue sitting on its hand? What's the alternative to an actual practical step that can be taken towards changing the current situation on the ground?
I can't imagine. There are so many, I don't know what is going in his mind, what he's believing he's going to do. And I believe, I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay. So I'll ask you something again about what you have written specifically in the past. You wrote an op-ed for Ynet before the formation of the government, calling on now Defense Minister Benny Gantz to not agree to annexation in coalition talks. With your experience in Israeli politics, what other scenario could have been executed to move forward with the stalemate in governance that had plagued our country for over a year? There was no government for a really long time. What else do you think could have been done to?
It depends. Till now, unilateral annexation, it's only a slogan. There is no plan. There is no master plan. There is no staff work. Nothing. Only a slogan. Annexations. You can annex unilaterally Ma'ale Adumim. the Palestinians understand that Ma'ale Adumim is a fact, and it's there, and it will remain there. And the same about Gush Etzion. So it's you will call it small annexations. I don't know how they will react to this, because when they talked with Prime Minister Olmert, with Prime Minister Barak, they understood then, and I believe that it's still today, that Ma'ale Adumim is there, Gush Etzion is there, and the Israelis will stay there for the end of the line. And it's so you can annex them. And you can annex something else in Samaria that it's not agreed before. It will be absolutely different. So it depends what will happen in the 1st of July.
So what you're saying, actually, what you're saying is, let me understand, if the plan only addresses limited areas to be annexed, like the major settlement blocks, which are in consensus at this point, you would feel differently?
If what?
I'm sorry, if the plan to claim sovereignty or annex specific parts of Judea and Samaria or the West Bank was only addressing the major settlement blocks that are already in consensus, like you mentioned, like you talked about Ma'ale Adumim, if you talked about Samaria, then Ariel maybe, would that change the way you feel about having such a move?
I believe that any unitary annexations is bad, is wrong for the Palestinians, for Israel, for our security, for the whole situation in the Middle East. We have to remember that at the end, the real enemy is beyond the Bekaa Valley, the Jordan Valley. It's in Iran. It's far away. But therefore, the peace with Jordan is very important, and it's part of the front against the Iranians. So you can't talk about Iran and at the same time to have unitary annexation. It's contradict each other. So you have to understand it. Therefore, I have to see a program, a plan, what they are going to do in order to understand what the reaction can be. What about the Palestinian citizens in the area? They will become Israeli citizens? They will vote to the Knesset? Or they will remain without a capability to vote, so it's not a democratic state anymore, it's some kind of apartheid. This is the state of Israel. So when we'll see the whole picture and we'll see what they are going to do, we can estimate what will be the reaction. But now it's only slogans and not more than that.
Okay, one more question on annexation before we get to our final topic. We just had a question from a reporter come in now. I know that you said you don't want to envision what could happen in the future, but if you could talk specifically about Palestinian-Israeli security coordination or cooperation, depending on who you ask, could you elaborate what could happen in the event that this cooperation or coordination would collapse?
We collaborate with the Palestinians, not because they are Zionists and not because we love them. We cooperate because our enemy, their enemy and our enemy is the same. It's the radical Muslims, it's the jihad and the Hamas. And they are well organized in order to take over if and when the Palestinian Authority will collapse. And this is for sure. In any case, if there will be change in the cooperation with the Palestinian Authority about security, it's favor the Hamas. For the Hamas, it's wonderful. And therefore, we have to not to allow it. And if it will collapse, it will collapse 100%, it's one thing. If it collapses in one place or another, it's another thing. So we have to see a plan, a program, in order to say this will be the consequences of this act of unilateral annexation.
Understood. Okay, well, if I've already got you on the line and you're the most recent ambassador of Israel to China, it would be a shame not to ask you a few questions on that issue. Even though we don't have a lot of time left, but I would really like to get some questions in. What would your recommendation to the government in Israel be in terms of policy towards Beijing in light of recent trade tensions between Beijing and Washington? Between China and the US. How does that affect Israeli policy towards China?
Israel policy, not of the Palestinians, but in the world.
I mean, not everything is connected.
I used to say to the Prime Minister that there are three superpowers that they have to coordinate and to play very delicately the situation between Washington, Beijing, and Jerusalem. And we are, in this case, some kind of a superpower. And as an ambassador in Beijing, I have all the time to play very carefully between Washington and Beijing and Jerusalem about everything. The United States of America is a cornerstone in the existence of the State of Israel. It's very important for us. At the end, they are our real friends and they are our real supporters in the world. There are sometimes we quarrel, like in a family, but basically we are together. The Chinese is something absolutely different. It's a different history, a different culture, a different mood, different people, and they are very strong economically, and therefore they are important for us. And we have to have the real economic relation with China, and at the same time remember all the time that our real friends are the Americans. And I must admit that till now the Prime Minister played it very well. And when I was the ambassador there, he served as a Prime Minister, as a Minister of Foreign Affairs for several times, because there was no other minister, and he knows how to do it. And this is the main issue. On one side, the Americans, our real supporters. On the other side, the Chinese. It's a huge market for our economy, and we have to find a way how to do it together. I must admit that now it became very complicated. After the policy of President Trump on one side and Xi Jinping, you have to realize that in China there is a huge, the political life in China absolutely changed because Xi Jinping is a president for his life. It's first time. The last time was Mao Zedong, and then there were 5 generations, and Xi Jinping, President Xi Jinping, is president for life. No one really understands the meaning of this, and what is the meaning to the whole administration in China, because till now, it was for 10 years, for 2 terms of 5 years. Not only the president, the whole administration, the governors, the party secretaries, everyone. So it's important for Israel, and we have to find a way how to deal with this and to keep the Americans as our real friends. And this is our mission, and we can do it.
So just 2 more questions on the issue before we wrap up, because we are running out of time. US Secretary of State Pompeo recently warned Israel about sharing its infrastructure and communication systems with the Chinese when he was visiting Israel. Is this a real concern or just political talk?
About the Chinese?
About sharing infrastructure and communication system with the Chinese. There was a declaration.
There is a special committee headed by the Prime Minister. Then they have to take the decisions, and they have to be very suspicious about the Chinese and to understand the meaning of giving them project in Israel, but at the same time to remember how they're important for us. And communication, it's a very delicate issue. I believe that communication must be in our hands, not in the American hands, not in the Chinese hands, but in our hands. And we have enough good people that know how to do it. And this is very, we have to be very, very careful about this.
And just one last question. How closely aligned are China and Iran? And Iran? Is this a current consideration of Israel's when deciding its foreign policy vis-a-vis China?
You have to understand China. It's a long lecture, because the Chinese, they are against the United States of America, and we are under the umbrella of the Americans. But we are friends with them, and we are real friends, and we have a very good relation with them. But we have to remember that the moment that you are pro-Americans, you are against them. And Iran is against America. So the Chinese feel very good with the Iranians, and they feel that they are in the same neighborhood against the big empire of America. Israel is in the American side, and the Iranians are against the Americans, and therefore they are friends of the Chinese. And you have to understand that, talking about energy, the energy is very important in China, is important in every place in the world. Energy is coming not from Iran, first of all from Saudi Arabia, then from the Gulf. When I was ambassador, it was Iraq, and only then the Iranian. There was the third or the fourth source of energy for the Chinese. But any oil field, in every energy field, because it's gas and oil in Iran, that is under the Chinese, it's under the Chinese. And in some places, it's some kind of Chinese territory that's supplying energy to China. And therefore, it's very important for them, very, very important for them. And they feel they're on the same side. It's not only energy, it's more than that. They feel that they're in the same side against the American, against the great devil, the American. We are the small devil.
Yep, the big devil and the small devil. So we're actually out of time, but for those of you on the line, if reporters have any follow-up questions for Mr. Vilnai, please reach out to the JPC and we'll put you in touch directly. Ambassador Matan Vilnai, former Home Front Minister, former Deputy Defense Minister, and Chair of CIS, thanks again for joining us.
No question? That's it?
That's it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And please join us for next week's webinars in this series, beginning with Dr. Saib Erekat, veteran Palestinian negotiator, this Sunday at noon. Invitations should arrive in your inboxes later today. Have a great week.
Give him my regards.
You're welcome to join the line as well. Maybe an interesting conversation will develop. Thank you.
Thank you, Talia. Thank you.
Goodbye.